My name is Rachel and I am 35 years old. Before I tell you everything that happened, let me take you straight to the moment that shook my whole life. The moment that still plays in my head like a loud echo. It happened on Christmas Day. We were all sitting at the dining table, the smell of roasted turkey filling the air. The lights on the Christmas tree were blinking softly, and everyone was chewing quietly. Then, right in the middle of biting into a piece of Christmas meat, my dad looked up, wiped his mouth, and said the words that froze the whole room. "You need to move out." He said it so casually, like it was nothing. Like he was asking me to pass the salt. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just placed my fork down and said, "Really? I pay the rent, the bills, and the groceries." He didn't blink. He just nodded and continued eating. No one said a word. Not my stepmom, not my younger brother, not my dad himself. Only the ticking clock behind us dared to make any sound. And here is the part that will make you wonder why a father would say that to his own daughter. The next day I packed all my things. On day 2, before sunrise, I moved every single one of my belongings out of the house, without saying anything to anyone. But what I found when I came back to the empty driveway after dropping the last box off, that is the part I'm not ready to reveal yet. Not yet. Because the moment I saw it, I froze in place. I'll tell you soon. Keep listening. Before the story takes you deeper, tell me, where are you watching from? I love knowing where my listeners live. Canada. The United States. Somewhere else. Now let me introduce the people in my life so you understand how everything led to that Christmas Day disaster. There's me, Rachel. 35 years old, a quiet, hard-working woman who believes in kindness, empathy, and paying your own way. I'm the type of person who helps even when no one helps back. I work full-time at an accounting office, and I've been paying most of the bills at home for years, even though technically it wasn't my job alone. Then there's Dad, whose real name is Michael. A man with a strong voice and an even stronger sense of pride. He wasn't always this cold. There was a time he was my hero. The man who held my bike steady when I learned to ride. The man who checked my bedroom closet for monsters. But life changes people. And sometimes not for the better. Next is my stepmom, Karen, who always acted sweet in public but sharp at home. She smiled with her teeth but never with her eyes. She always made it seem like I was a guest, not part of the family. She complained that I took too much space, even though I paid for the house to keep standing. Then there's Derek, my younger brother. 27 years old. Lazy in the kind of way that becomes a lifestyle. He played video games all night and slept all day, yet somehow he was always treated like a golden child. Dad could shout at me for leaving one cup in the sink, but Derek could leave a whole mountain of plates and still get a pat on the back. Life in that house was a mix of highs and lows, some days quiet, some days tense. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for what happened during that Christmas dinner. Now let's go back to the beginning, before the moment Dad told me to move out. For months, things had been slowly getting worse. Dad had started making small comments like, adults shouldn't stay with their parents too long, even though I was the one keeping the lights on. Karen dropped hints that the house felt too full, even though she never lifted a finger to help with bills. Derek once told me straight to my face, "Why don't you go get your own apartment? You make enough money." And I remember thinking, funny how you know how much I make but you don't pay even one bill. But I stayed. Not because I couldn't survive on my own. Oh, trust me, I could. I stayed because I believed in family. I believed in supporting each other. I believed kindness would eventually change something. Kindness matters. Empathy matters. But sometimes people take advantage of those things. One Saturday morning about a month before Christmas, I came home with bags full of groceries. I had spent almost all my paycheck stocking the house. When I placed the bags on the kitchen counter, Dad didn't even look up from his phone. Karen walked in, saw the groceries, and instead of saying, "Thank you," she said, "You didn't buy the almond milk I like?" I stared at her. She wasn't joking. Then Derek walked in, heading straight to the fridge. "You got chips?" he asked. Not hi, not thanks. For the first time, something inside me cracked a little. Just a little. But I let it go. That was one of the low moments. But there were highs too, like the time my coworker invited me over for a quiet Thanksgiving dinner. And for the first time in months I felt like a real part of a family. They laughed with me, prayed with me, and sent me home with leftovers that tasted like hope. Or when I bought myself a small necklace with the word strong written on it. A reminder that no matter what happened at home, I was still standing. But Christmas Day, that was the highest peak so far. Let's go back there. The room was warm from the oven heat. The table was set nicely. Red napkins, shiny plates, cranberry sauce in a glass bowl. Everyone looked like they were enjoying themselves. Then Dad dropped the bomb. You need to move out. Just like that. No warning. No conversation. No reason. And when I answered calmly that I paid the rent, the bills, and the groceries, he looked annoyed, as if I had spoken out of turn. That night I packed a suitcase. Not because I planned to leave immediately, but because something told me I needed to be ready. The next day, I rented a small U-Haul truck. I carried boxes, bags, old memories, clothes, and everything I owned. I didn't cry once. I didn't argue. I didn't knock on anyone's door. I moved in silence. By day 2, everything I owned was gone from that house. Every book, every mug, every piece of clothing. I drove away without a single word. But when I returned to the house one last time, just to check something, I found something waiting in the driveway. Something none of them expected. And something that would change everything. That is where I must pause. Because this is only the beginning. And the extreme moment that ends this chapter was the moment I froze in that driveway, staring at what someone had left behind. Something that made my heartbeat crash in my ears. I stood there in the driveway, the cold winter air brushing against my face as my breath came out in tiny white clouds. The sun was barely rising, painting the sky with soft pink and gold stripes. Everything was quiet, too quiet. And right there, sitting in the middle of the driveway like someone had dropped it carelessly, was the object that stopped me in my tracks. I won't reveal exactly what it was yet. Not yet. But I will tell you this. It wasn't something small. And it wasn't something someone could have forgotten by mistake. It meant someone in that house knew I left. And they were trying to send a message. But was it a warning? Cry for help? Or something meant to pull me back? My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. I took one slow step toward it. Then another. But before I touched it, a sound came from inside the house. A sound that made me jump back. And that sound is the last thing I'm going to say about that moment for now. Because to understand the meaning of what I saw, you need to understand the days, the hours, and the small choices that led to that morning. So let's go back. 1 week before Christmas. The snow was starting to fall in little soft flakes that melted as soon as they touched the ground. I walked into the house carrying a big box of cleaning supplies, because apparently, no one else in the house believed in cleaning unless I was the one doing it. Dad was sitting on the couch watching TV. Derek was asleep. And Karen was in the kitchen scrolling on her phone. I put the box down and said, "Hey everyone, should we do some cleaning before Christmas? Maybe get the house ready for guests." Karen looked at me like I just asked her to run a marathon. "Guests?" she repeated. "You're inviting people." "No," I said quickly. "I just meant, it's Christmas. We usually make the house nice." Dad shrugged. "Looks fine to me." It wasn't fine. There were dirty plates on the coffee table, socks on the floor, empty cups near the TV, and crumbs everywhere. But I swallowed my annoyance and grabbed the cleaning wipes. As I started cleaning, Derek walked in, yawning loudly like he had survived some great battle. He frowned when he saw me sweeping. "You always clean when I'm sleeping," he said. "It's annoying." I stared at him. "Derek, it's 2 in the afternoon. And?" he asked, rubbing his eyes like I had done something wrong. I wanted to argue. I wanted to shout. But I took a deep breath and reminded myself of the word engraved on my necklace. Strong. Sometimes being strong meant staying calm even when everything inside you was boiling. Later that night I sat alone on my bed. The room was cold because the heater had been making strange noises, but Dad insisted it was fine and refused to call a technician. I wrapped a blanket around myself and whispered, "You can do this, Rachel. One more week until Christmas. Maybe things will get better." But deep down, I knew things weren't going to magically change. People don't change because you hope they will. The next day, I drove to the grocery store. My cart filled up quickly. Turkey, vegetables, drinks, snacks, everything we would need for Christmas. As I unloaded the items onto the counter, the cashier, a friendly older man named George, smiled at me. "Big celebration ahead?" he asked. I forced a smile. "Something like that." He scanned each item slowly. "Families are interesting, aren't they?" he said. "Sometimes the ones you love the most end up being the ones who test you the hardest." Pause. His words hit harder than he knew. He bagged the groceries and said, "But remember, kindness is powerful, even when others don't see it." He nodded. "Thank you. Really." Carrying the grocery bags into the house felt like carrying the weight of the whole family. Karen peeked inside the bags and said, "You didn't buy the brand of cranberry sauce I like." I sighed quietly. Dad poked his head into the kitchen. "How much did all that cost?" "A lot," I admitted gently. He frowned. "Maybe you should start budgeting better." And blinked. I was buying everything they ate, everything they drank, everything they used. Yet I needed to budget better. I went upstairs before I said something I would regret. That night, as I sat on my bed thinking, I made a small promise to myself. After Christmas, things will change. One way or another. Little did I know the change wouldn't wait until after Christmas. It would hit on Christmas Day itself. Now let's go back to that dinner. The table was decorated. The plates were set. I had cooked almost everything. Derek came downstairs wearing sweatpants. Karen wore a red sweater. Dad was humming softly. He always hummed when he was in a good mood. For a moment I allowed myself to hope. Maybe, just maybe, this Christmas would be peaceful. We served the food. We sat down. We started eating. Then, mid-bite, Dad looked at me and said the words that cracked the ground beneath my feet. "You need to move out." The room went still. Even the lights seemed to stop blinking for a second. Kept my voice steady. "Really? I'm the one who pays the rent, the bills, and the groceries." Dad didn't care. And in that moment I realized something awful. I was only useful to them when I was paying for things. Not because they valued me. Not because they loved me. But because I was convenient. That night I packed a suitcase. The next day I packed everything else. I moved silently like a ghost in my own home. No one came out of their room to help. No one asked where I was going. No one asked why. By the second day, before the sun even rose, I moved the last box into my truck. The sky was still dark. The street was empty. Felt both scary and freeing. And that brings us back to the driveway. The moment I saw the object sitting there, the object someone had left for me, I walked toward it slowly, my heart pounding harder and harder. I reached out my hand. And just before I could touch it, a loud noise came from the house. The kind of noise that tells you something big, something unexpected, something shocking is about to happen. And just like that, the extreme event hit. The noise exploded through the quiet morning like someone had slammed a door or knocked something over. It was loud enough to make me jump back from the mysterious object in the driveway. For a second I couldn't even breathe. My hand froze mid-air, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might break out of my chest. The house, the same house where I had lived, worked, cleaned, paid bills, and tried to keep peace for years, was suddenly alive with a sound that didn't belong there. Something urgent, something wrong. But this is where I paused the moment. Because to understand what that noise meant, you have to know what happened the night before I left. A night that was quiet on the outside, but full of whispers inside me. After Dad told me to move out during Christmas dinner, I went upstairs without slamming the door. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing me angry. I sat on my bed with my suitcase open like a silent witness. Every item I packed felt like a little goodbye I had never planned to say. As I folded my clothes, I remembered something Dad used to say when I was little. Family sticks together. But as an adult, I learned some families stick together only when it benefits them. Kindness is wonderful, but kindness without boundaries becomes a trap. And I had been trapped for years without seeing it. That night as I packed, I felt sadness. But I also felt something else, relief. The kind of relief you feel after holding your breath for too long. Around midnight, I heard laughter downstairs. Derek and Karen were watching TV like nothing had happened. Dad's voice joined theirs. They weren't sad. They weren't confused. They weren't worried. They were comfortable. And that was the moment I understood something deeply. They expected me to stay. They thought I would argue or cry or beg. They thought I would cling to the house because I wanted their attention. But they didn't understand me at all. I didn't need their house. I didn't need their approval. I only needed peace. So I packed everything quietly. But something strange happened around 2 a.m. I went downstairs to grab a box from the hallway closet. The house was dark except for a little light coming from the kitchen. I thought someone had left the fridge door open, but when I stepped closer, I realized the light was coming from the small lamp on the counter. The one Karen always turned off before bed. Then I saw him, Dad. He wasn't drinking water. He wasn't getting a snack. He was sitting at the kitchen table. Alone. Staring at something in his hands. Piece of paper. He didn't hear me. Or maybe he did and he pretended not to. His shoulders were slumped, like he was carrying a heavy weight. The man who always looked strong suddenly looked worn. I wanted to ask if he was okay. I wanted to ask why he had told me to move out. I wanted to ask if he meant it. But I didn't. Because kindness doesn't mean sacrificing your own heart. So I turned away and went back upstairs. That was the last time I saw him before I left. The next morning before the sun rose, I loaded the last box into my rented truck. My arms were tired, my fingers were cold, but my mind was clear. For the first time in a long time I felt in control of my own life. I closed the truck door, turned the key, and drove away to the small apartment I had rented weeks before. Yes, weeks. I had seen the signs long before Christmas Day. Comments, the shifting tone, the quiet resentment. Kindness does not mean blindness. My new apartment was small but warm. I dropped my things inside and sat on the floor surrounded by boxes. It was empty, but it felt like a fresh page. I spent the night there. Then, early the next morning, I drove back to the old house one last time to pick up something I had forgotten, a box of old journals I kept under my bed. And that was when I saw it. The object. Sitting alone in the driveway, waiting for me. But before I could reach it, the noise came from inside. Crash. Thud. Something big falling. Froze. Had someone slipped? Had someone broken something? Was someone hurt? My first instinct was to run inside. Because no matter what they did to me, I wasn't raised to ignore someone in trouble. But before I could take a step toward the door, something else happened. The front door slowly opened. And a figure stepped out. Not Derek. Not Karen. It was Dad. He stood in the doorway wearing a heavy coat, as if he had rushed outside. His face looked different. Tired, pale, and maybe even scared. He stared at me like he wasn't sure I was real. For a moment we didn't speak. Then his eyes shifted. Not to me, but to the object in the driveway. He stared at it the same way I had. Like he didn't expect it to be there. Like it meant something he didn't want to face. He took one step toward me, opening his mouth like he wanted to talk. And then, a voice from inside the house screamed his name. Not in fear. In anger. A loud, furious shout that sliced through the cold morning air. Karen. And that was when the next extreme event hit. Karen stormed onto the porch, pointing at something that made Dad stumble backward. And the entire situation flipped into chaos. Karen burst out of the front door so fast the screen slapped against the wall. Her red sweater, still wrinkled from sleep, looked almost wild against the gray morning sky. Her eyes weren't just angry. They were furious. The kind of fury that comes from fear, confusion, and something else I couldn't name yet. "Michael!" she screamed at my dad. "Explain this. Right now." Dad stepped back like her voice had pushed him. He wasn't a small man, but in that moment, he looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. His eyes darted between Karen and the object in the driveway. The same object that had made me stop cold just moments earlier. The same object that had clearly shaken him too. You're probably wondering what it was. A suitcase. Paperwork. A letter. Something broken. Something stolen. Well, it was far more shocking than that. But I'm not revealing it yet, because you need to understand the chain reaction that came before everything exploded. Karen marched down the porch stairs so fast I thought she might trip. She pointed at the object again, her face turning red. When did you know about this? She demanded. Did you hide it? Did you ignore it? Or did you think it wasn't important to tell me? Dad lifted his hands slowly, trying to calm her down. Karen, I didn't know I didn't know anyone. I didn't expect. He couldn't form a full sentence. This man who told me to move out mid-bite of Christmas meat. This man who once carried so much pride in his voice it felt heavy. This man who never stumbled for words. Couldn't speak. That alone was terrifying. Karen swung toward me next. Rachel, did you bring that back here? Is this some kind of game? Some kind of message? Her voice cracked on the last word. That crack told me everything. She wasn't just angry. She was scared. I didn't put it there, I said softly. When I arrived, it was already. A shout cut through my words. Dad! Stop! It was Derek. He ran onto the porch wearing jeans and a hoodie, hair messy, face pale like he had seen something terrible inside the house. The anger he used to throw at me so easily was gone. Completely gone. What's happening? He asked, breathless. I heard something break. Mom, why are you yelling? And what is that doing out here? He pointed to the object too. All three of them stood staring at it now. Karen, Derek. Their eyes shifting between fear, recognition, and something close to guilt. I felt my heart squeeze tightly inside my chest. Whatever that object meant to them, whatever message it carried, whatever secret it revealed, was tied to something deeper than I expected. Dad took a step toward me. Rachel, listen, there's something you should know. Karen spun toward him. Don't you dare. Not now, not like this. Karen, Dad snapped, his voice cracking. She deserves to know the truth. Derek looked between them like a child lost in a storm. What truth? Dad, what are we talking about? But before anyone could answer, a second loud sound erupted from inside the house. This time it wasn't something falling. It was glass shattering. Karen gasped and ran back to the porch. Dad followed. Derek shouted something and sprinted inside. For a split second I thought about staying outside, keeping myself separate from them and their chaos. But curiosity is powerful. And my heart, even after everything, still worried someone might be hurt. I rushed toward the house too. The moment I stepped inside, cold air hit my face. A window was broken, glass all over the hardwood floor. The living room looked like someone had panicked and knocked over the small side table. A photo frame was lying cracked on the ground. But that wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part was the envelope lying on the floor. It was the same type of envelope as the object outside. The same handwriting. The same message printed across the front. Name. For Rachel. I felt my knees weaken. Another one. Inside the house. Dad bent down slowly and lifted the envelope with trembling fingers. His eyes met mine, full of something I had never seen in him before. Fear. Real fear. Rachel, he said quietly. This wasn't supposed to happen yet. Karen grabbed his arm. Don't tell her. Not until we. No, Dad said sharply. She deserves the truth. She should have known years ago. Years ago. My mind spun. Derek whispered. Dad, what's going on? Dad exhaled and looked at me again. Rachel, that envelope and the one outside. They're from someone you haven't heard from in a very long time. My heart thudded. Someone from my past. Someone who knew me. Someone who knew my family. Dad swallowed hard. It's from your mother. Air left my lungs so fast I almost stumbled. Not Karen. My real mother. The woman who left when I was 8. The woman no one in this house let me talk about. I don't, I whispered. That's not possible. She disappeared. You said. Dad's voice cracked. I told you what I had to tell you. I didn't want you hurt. Karen looked away. Derek looked confused. Dad stepped toward me again. Rachel, she found you. She sent these. And the reason I told you to move out. He closed his eyes. Is because she contacted me first. A sharp coldness filled my spine. So that was it. That was why he acted strange. Why he sat alone in the kitchen at night. Why he couldn't look me in the eye. My mother was back. And she was reaching out to me. But why now? Why with letters? Why secretly? Why 2 different envelopes? One outside, one inside. Dad opened his mouth to continue. But then, third loud sound echoed outside. Not glass. Not furniture. Car door. Then another. Then footsteps. Fast, heavy, purposeful footsteps walking toward the house. Someone was outside. Someone coming straight to the front door. Someone who wasn't waiting anymore. All of us froze. Dad's face turned white. Karen covered her mouth. Derek backed away. And then, a sharp, urgent knock rattled the whole doorframe. 3 knocks. Then silence. My heart felt like it had stopped. Dad whispered, voice shaking. Rachel, that's her. And with that, the final extreme event hit. The 3 knocks on the door echoed through the house like thunder. 1, 2, 3. Then silence so deep we could hear each other breathe. Dad stood frozen. His hand halfway raised like he meant to reach for me but couldn't. Karen backed toward the kitchen with her face as pale as snow. Derek swallowed so loudly it echoed across the room. No. I stood still, staring at the door like I was staring at a memory I wasn't sure I wanted to open. Dad whispered again. Rachel, it's her. My real mother. The woman who left when I was 8 without a goodbye. The woman Dad never allowed me to ask about. The woman whose absence became an empty space in every family picture. She was on the other side of the door. And she had come for me. Dad took a slow breath and stepped forward, but I gently placed my hand on his arm. No, I said quietly. I'll open it. He hesitated. His eyes softened for the first time in years. Soft with guilt, fear, and something like regret. But he nodded and stepped back. The house felt heavier with every step I took toward the door. I could still hear the sound of the envelope crunching lightly in Dad's hand. The one with my name on it. When I reached the door, my hand trembled. Not from fear, but from something deeper. Something I hadn't allowed myself to feel for years. Oh. I pulled the door open slowly. A woman stood outside, wrapped in a thick gray coat. Snowflakes clung to her dark hair. Her eyes, brown, warm, and unmistakably familiar, locked with mine instantly. She looked older, more tired. But her face was the same one I remembered from childhood photographs. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The cold air rushed between us. Her lips trembled before she whispered my name. Rachel. My chest squeezed. Mom. Her eyes filled with tears. She reached out but stopped halfway like she wasn't sure she was allowed. Pain flashed across her face. I didn't want to leave you, she whispered. I never wanted to. Behind me I felt Dad stiffen. Karen froze. Derek stared like he was seeing a ghost. Mom glanced past me, her expression tightening as soon as she saw them. I told you, she said softly to Dad. I told you I would come back. You didn't have to hide everything. Dad's jaw clenched. I did what I thought was right. What you thought was right, she corrected sharply, hurt bleeding through her voice. But you didn't think about what she needed. I felt the tension buzzing between them like electricity. Dad wasn't a cruel man, but he was a proud one, and pride can do as much damage as anger. He took a deep breath. Rachel, Your mother didn't leave because she didn't love you. Mom closed her eyes, trying not to cry. I left because I was sick. Very sick. I didn't want you to see me like that. They told me I might not live. I left to get treatment, far away, and when I finally got better, she looked at Dad. Someone had moved on without me. Dad's gaze fell. Derek whispered, Mom. I didn't know. Karen said nothing. Mom looked back at me. I wrote letters, Rachel. So many letters. I tried to reach you. I tried everything. But I got no answers. I thought you hated me. Dad swallowed. I didn't want her confused. You were gone so long. I was fighting for my life, she snapped, her voice breaking. I was fighting to come back. The room went still. My mind rushed with memories. Soft ones, warm ones. My real mother brushing my hair. Singing me to sleep. Laughing as we baked cookies. Her smile. Her kindness. Pieces of a puzzle I thought was lost. And suddenly, the strange object in the driveway made sense. Because now, finally, I will reveal it. It wasn't a box. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't something broken. It was a snow globe. My mother's snow globe. The one she gave me on my 8th birthday, the night before she disappeared. The one she said I should keep forever, no matter what. Inside it, a tiny house sat under falling white sparkles. I hadn't seen it in years. Someone had kept it. Someone had hidden it. Someone had placed it in the driveway the morning she returned. I knelt slowly and picked it up. Mom's lip trembled. I gave you that to remind you I'd come back. I looked at Dad. He looked away. He didn't need to say it. Already knew. The truth crashed over me like a wave. This family, Karen, Derek, even Dad, had depended on me for years. They leaned on me, used me, let me carry everything. And they never told me the one thing that mattered most. That my mother never abandoned me. She fought her way back. They just didn't tell me. But in that moment, I made a choice. I could drown in anger. Or I could rise into freedom. I looked at Mom. I want to know everything. Not today, not right now, but soon. Her tears fell. Anything you want. Any time. Dad stepped forward. Rachel. I'm sorry. His voice cracked like thin ice. For the first time since childhood, he looked like he wasn't my judge or my burden. He looked like a man who had made a huge mistake, and finally realized it. I nodded slowly. I know, Dad. But things won't go back to the way they were. He lowered his head. I understand. Then I turned to my mother. Come with me. Her eyes widened. Really? Yes, I said softly. I moved into a new place. It's small, but it's mine. And I want you to see it. She smiled, tired, emotional, but real. I'd love that. We walked toward my truck together. Karen leaned against the doorframe, silent for the first time in years. Derek whispered, Rachel, are you coming back later? I looked at him gently. Maybe. But not to live here. Not anymore. He nodded slowly, a lesson settling into his eyes. The snow began to fall again. Soft, steady, peaceful. I opened the truck door for my mother, feeling a warmth I thought I'd lost forever. A new beginning. Real one. As I climbed into the driver's seat, Mom held the snow globe in her hands. She shook it gently and whispered, See, I told you no matter what, I'd always find you. And for the first time in a very, very long time, I believed it.